A billionaire CEO stops in the freezing night, and the words that come out of his mouth shock the world. "You belong in my bed, not the streets." Everyone thinks it's a scandal, but for him it's something else. A desperate act of compassion for a woman who's lost everything: her job, her home, her faith in herself. He takes her in trying to save her life, but the cameras catch everything, and soon the world turns cruel. The headlines twist his kindness into obsession and her dignity into a joke. As she fights to rebuild her life inside his mansion, something unexpected begins to grow: hope, laughter, and maybe even love. But when his vengeful ex exposes her deepest secrets on national TV, everything shatters. Now, with the world watching. Was it charity or destiny? And when the truth comes out, will love still be strong enough to bring her home? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The bitter Chicago wind howled through the steel and glass canyons of the city's downtown, carrying stinging pellets of sleet. Grayson Vale stood at the entrance of the grand ballroom, where chandeliers still sparkled through the tall windows behind him. The annual charity gala for his foundation to end urban poverty had been a resounding success, with millions pledged by Chicago's elite. His shoulders, broad beneath his perfectly tailored tuxedo, remained straight despite the biting cold. Marcus, his head of security, held an umbrella over him while efficiently coordinating with the other guards through his earpiece. 20 feet away, the warm interior lights of Grayson's limousine beckoned. "The paparazzi are still lingering, sir," Marcus murmured. "We should move quickly." Indeed, camera flashes punctuated the darkness like lightning, catching the crystalline drops of sleet in brief, bright moments. Grayson had learned long ago to ignore them, his face a careful mask of confident indifference. He took one step toward the waiting car. Then he heard it, a sound so faint it nearly disappeared beneath the howling wind. A whimper, filled with pain and desperation, coming from the narrow alley beside the ballroom. Grayson stopped. Marcus tensed beside him. "Sir." But Grayson was already turning, his expensive shoes crunching on the icy sidewalk. The sound came again, and this time there was no mistaking the human suffering in it. He strode toward the alley's mouth, ignoring Marcus's protests. "Mr. Vale, please, we need to get you to the car." The service alley was dark, lit only by a flickering security light mounted high on the building's wall. Dumpsters lined one side, their metal surfaces slick with ice. And there, huddled against the base of one, was a human form wrapped in what appeared to be a bedsheet. Grayson's breath caught. The sheet, torn and soaked through, did little to protect its occupant from the brutal weather. As he drew closer, he could see it was a young woman. She was curled into herself, her body shaking violently with cold. Even in the dim light, he could see she was significantly overweight, her face round and pale against the dark concrete. In her trembling hands, she clutched something, a photograph, its edges warped by moisture. The security light caught the image for a moment. An older woman with the same gentle features as the girl before him, smiling at the camera. "Call an ambulance," Grayson ordered, already shrugging off his expensive wool coat. Marcus started to protest, but one look from his employer silenced him. Grayson knelt beside the woman, uncaring of the slush soaking into his tailored pants. Up close, he could see her lips had taken on a bluish tinge. Her eyes were half closed, consciousness clearly slipping away. "Can you hear me?" he asked softly, draping his coat around her shoulders. The warmth of his body still lingered in the wool. Her eyes fluttered, focusing on him with effort. I'm sorry," she whispered through chattering teeth. "I'll move. Just need a minute." "You're not moving anywhere except somewhere warm," Grayson said firmly. He could hear the camera shutters clicking rapidly now. The photographers had followed him into the alley, hungry for whatever drama was unfolding. The young woman tried to push the coat away with weak hands. "Can't take your coat. Too expensive." Grayson secured it more firmly around her. "It's yours now." He glanced at the photograph she still clutched. "Is that your mother?" A tear rolled down her cheek, instantly freezing in the brutal cold. "Was?" she managed. "She's gone now." Something in Grayson's chest tightened. He thought of his own mother, who had raised him alone after his father left, who had worked 3 jobs to keep food on their table. The woman before him couldn't be much older than 30, far too young to be alone on these deadly winter streets. Without further hesitation, he slipped one arm under her knees and the other behind her back. She was heavy, but years of early morning workouts had left him strong. "I'm taking you somewhere safe," he said as he lifted her. "No, please," she protested weakly. "I'm too heavy. I'll hurt you." "Shh," Grayson soothed, adjusting his grip. He could feel how cold she was, even through the coat and sheet. "You're going to be all right." Marcus appeared at his side. "Sir, the ambulance is on its way." "Cancel it," Grayson ordered, already walking toward his limousine. "Have Dr. Chen meet us at my penthouse instead." Dr. Chen was his private physician, who could be trusted to be both discreet and thorough. The camera flashes were constant now, and Grayson could imagine tomorrow's headlines. But as he looked down at the shivering woman in his arms, he found he didn't care. She had begun to lose her battle with consciousness, her head lolling against his shoulder. Just before they reached the car, Grayson leaned down and whispered near her ear, "You belong in my bed, not the streets." He meant it as pure compassion, a promise of warmth and safety to someone who desperately needed both. But even as the words left his mouth, he could hear the photographer's excitement. Spike could practically see the social media storms brewing. The woman in his arms didn't respond. She had finally passed out, her body going limp against him. Marcus hurried ahead to open the car door, and Grayson carefully maneuvered them both inside the warm interior. As they pulled away from the curb, he grabbed a blanket from the car's storage compartment and tucked it around her, adding another layer of warmth. In the soft lighting of the limousine, he could see her better. Despite the pallor of cold, her face was lovely in its way. Gentle features, long lashes, and the kind of mouth that seemed made for genuine smiles. The photograph was still clutched in her hand, and he carefully worked it free, not wanting it to be damaged further. He slipped it into his jacket pocket for safekeeping. "What's your name?" he asked softly, though he knew she couldn't hear him. Tomorrow he would have his team find out everything about her, make sure she got whatever help she needed. For tonight, though, his only goal was to get her warm and safe. The limousine glided through Chicago's icy streets, carrying them toward his penthouse in the sky. Outside, the wind continued to howl, and somewhere in the city's digital sphere, his whispered words were already spreading like wildfire. But inside the car, there was only the sound of the woman's breathing, growing steadier with each passing minute, and Grayson's quiet determination to see her through this night. The paramedics burst into action the moment Grayson's limousine arrived at Northwestern Memorial Hospital's emergency entrance. Their efficient hands lifted Ellie onto a stretcher while rattling off vital signs and medical terminology. Grayson followed closely, his normally commanding presence softened by concern. "Sir, we'll need her insurance information," a nurse called out, clipboard in hand. "I'm covering all expenses," Grayson stated firmly. "Contact my office for any billing matters." The nurse's eyebrows rose slightly, but she nodded and hurried after the medical team. Through the flurry of activity, Ellie stirred, her eyes opening to the harsh fluorescent lights. "No, please," she mumbled, trying to push away the hands that were helping her. I can't afford. Grayson stepped closer to her stretcher. Don't worry about the cost. Just let them help you. Tears welled in Ellie's eyes as she shook her head weakly. You don't understand. The bills, they're why I'm... But the medical team was already wheeling her away, leaving Grayson standing in the corridor, his usual certainty wavering. For the first time in years, he felt helpless. All his billions couldn't erase the shame and fear he'd seen in her eyes. Hours passed in the sterile waiting room. Grayson's phone buzzed constantly with messages from his PR team, but he ignored them all. Around dawn, a doctor finally approached him. Mr. Vale, she's stable now. Moderate hypothermia, malnutrition and exhaustion, but she'll recover fully with proper care. When can she have visitors? She's awake now, but... The doctor hesitated. She's quite distressed. Someone left a TV on in her room and, well... Grayson's jaw tightened. He pulled out his phone and finally looked at the notifications. His heart sank as he saw the trending headlines. Billionaire's midnight rescue, accompanied by photos of him carrying Ellie. The comments below were cruel, focusing on her weight and circumstances with savage glee. I'd like to see her, he said quietly. He found Ellie sitting up in bed, staring at her hands. The hospital gown seemed to swallow her, making her look smaller than she was. A half-eaten bowl of hospital food sat untouched on her tray. I brought you something better than that, Grayson said softly, holding up a thermos of homemade chicken soup, his mother's recipe, prepared by his personal chef. Ellie jumped slightly, then tried to shrink into herself. Mr. Vale, I'm so sorry about all this. The media... I never meant to cause trouble. You haven't caused anything, he said firmly, pulling up a chair. And please, call me Grayson. He reached into a shopping bag and pulled out some clothes, soft sweats, and a warm sweater in deep purple. I thought you might want something comfortable to wear. Ellie touched the fabric hesitantly, her eyes widening at the size tags. How did you know? I had my assistant call a few stores. It wasn't hard. He poured the soup into a bowl. Now, will you tell me how a teacher ended up in that alley? Her hands trembled as she accepted the soup. How did you know I was a teacher? You have that look, patient eyes, kind face. Am I wrong? No, she whispered. 3rd grade. I loved it. The kids. Her voice broke slightly. But then Mum got sick. Cancer. The insurance wouldn't cover most of her treatments, so I used everything I had. Credit cards, savings, even sold my car. After she died, I couldn't keep up with the payments, lost my apartment, tried to find another teaching job, but... She gestured to herself. Who wants someone like me teaching their kids? Someone who's kind, educated, and dedicated enough to sacrifice everything for family. Grayson's voice was gentle, but firm. Any school would be lucky to have you. Ellie's eyes flashed. You don't have to be nice to me, Mr. Vale. I've seen the news. I know what people are saying. The billionaire and the beggar. It's like some cruel fairy tale. Grayson leaned forward, studying her face. There it was, that spark of fire behind the shame. This woman hadn't given up. She'd been beaten down by a system that valued the wrong things. A commotion outside the window caught their attention. Below, reporters had gathered at the hospital entrance, cameras ready. They'll be waiting for you, Grayson said quietly. They'll follow you, ask questions, try to turn your story into entertainment. Ellie's face paled. I can't face that. Maybe if I wait until dark. I have another option. Grayson paused, choosing his words carefully. Come stay at my home until you recover. I have plenty of space, complete privacy, and security that can keep the media away. No strings attached, just a safe place to heal and plan your next steps. That's too much, people will talk even more. People will talk regardless. The question is, what's best for you right now? Ellie was quiet for a long moment, stirring her soup thoughtfully. Finally, she looked up at him. Why are you doing this? Because 20 years ago, my mother and I needed help, and someone gave us a chance. Sometimes that's all it takes. One person willing to step up when the world steps back. Tears spilled down Ellie's cheeks, but she nodded slowly. Okay, thank you. An hour later, dressed in her new clothes, Ellie took hesitant steps toward the hospital's side entrance where Grayson's car waited. Her borrowed sweater was soft against her skin, the first new piece of clothing she'd worn in over a year. She clutched her mother's photograph, now dried and carefully preserved in a protective sleeve Grayson had brought, close to her chest like a shield. Marcus held the car door open, his face professionally neutral. Ellie paused before getting in, looking at Grayson with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. It's going to be all right, he said softly, guiding her into the car with a gentle hand on her elbow. The door closed with a solid thunk, sealing them into the quiet interior. Through the tinted windows, they could see reporters running toward their previous position, too late to catch their departure. As the car pulled away from the curb, Ellie watched the hospital disappear behind them, her heart pounding with equal parts terror and possibility. The elevator climbed silently to the 40th floor, its glass walls offering a dizzying view of Chicago's glittering skyline. Ellie pressed herself into the corner, trying to make herself smaller as Grayson stood beside her, tall and composed. The city spread out below them like a blanket of stars, snow swirling between the buildings in delicate patterns. When the doors opened, Ellie's breath caught in her throat. The penthouse stretched before her, all gleaming marble and soaring windows. The ceiling seemed to float above them, supported by elegant columns that glowed warmly in the evening light. Everything sparkled with wealth and taste, from the crystal chandelier to the plush ivory carpets that probably cost more than she used to make in a year. "Welcome home," Grayson said softly, watching her face. Ellie took a hesitant step forward, then froze. Her worn sneakers left tiny, wet marks on the pristine floor. I don't want to mess anything up." "Aye, there you are," a cheerful voice called out. A plump woman with silver-streaked dark hair hurried toward them, her face creased in a warm smile. "I'm Maria Lopez, the housekeeper. Don't worry about the floor, mi cielo. That's what mops are for." Before Ellie could respond, another woman appeared, elegant and silver-haired, with Grayson's same striking blue eyes. Catherine Vale moved with quiet grace, her smile gentle but knowing. "You must be Ellie," Catherine said, taking her hands. "I'm Grayson's mother. We've been so worried about you." Ellie blinked back tears at the unexpected warmth in their voices. Thank you, but you don't have to—" "Nonsense," Catherine interrupted firmly. "What we have to do is get some food into you. Maria has made her famous chicken soup, and I won't take no for an answer." "But first," Maria chimed in, "let's get you settled. Your room is all ready. Wait until you see the view." They guided her down a hallway, past artwork that belonged in museums, to a suite bigger than her old apartment. The bed was huge and cloud-soft, with crisp white linens and more pillows than she could count. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city spread out below, snow falling in lazy spirals against the darkening sky. "The bathroom's through there?" Maria said, opening another door to reveal a marble paradise. "I've put out fresh towels and everything you might need. There are clothes in the closet, just basics for now, but we can get you anything else you want." It's too much," Ellie whispered, overwhelmed by their kindness. "What's too much is you thinking you don't deserve care," Catherine said gently. "Now, would you like to freshen up before dinner?" Ellie nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. When they left her alone, she sank onto the bed, running her hand over the soft duvet. How had she ended up here, in this glass palace in the sky? 20 minutes later, wrapped in the softest robe she'd ever touched, Ellie followed the smell of cooking to a warm kitchen that felt more like home than anything she'd known in years. Maria stirred a pot of soup while Catherine set the table with casual grace. "Sit, sit," Maria insisted, ladling out generous portions. "You're too thin, pobrecita. We need to put some meat on those bones." The soup was heaven, rich with chicken, vegetables, and tiny pasta stars that reminded Ellie of childhood. She hadn't realized how hungry she was until the first spoonful touched her lips. "Slow down, dear," Catherine said kindly. "There's plenty more." In the background, they could hear Grayson's voice rising from his study. "I don't care about the optics, James. She's a human being, not a PR problem. No, I will not send her to a shelter. The board can call an emergency meeting if they want to, but my decision stands." Ellie's spoon clattered against her bowl. "I'm causing trouble for him." "You're doing no such thing," Catherine said firmly. "My son makes his own choices, and frankly, it's about time he remembered what really matters in life." "But the newspapers?" Ellie had seen the headlines on Grayson's phone during the ride over. "Billionaire's bizarre rescue. Vale Industries CEO houses homeless woman. Charity case or PR stunt? Let them talk." Maria snorted. "People with empty lives love to fill them with chisme, gossip about others. But you?" She reached over to pat Ellie's hand. "You focus on getting stronger, on remembering who you are." "I don't even know anymore," Ellie admitted quietly. "Then we'll help you remember," Catherine promised. "Not out of pity, dear, out of respect for your dignity. Every person has value, no matter what the world tries to tell them." Later that night, unable to sleep in the too-soft bed, Ellie wrapped herself in a blanket and stepped out onto her private balcony. The snow had picked up, dancing in the light pollution that turned the sky orange. Far below, cars crawled like toys along Michigan Avenue, their headlights cutting through the storm. She could hear Grayson still on the phone in his office, his voice tired but determined. "Listen, the woman has 2 degrees. She was a teacher before medical bills destroyed her life. She could have been any of us if circumstances were different. No, this isn't about publicity. It's about doing what's right." Ellie hugged herself tighter, watching her breath fog in the cold air. In all her time on the streets, she'd learned to make herself invisible, to shrink away from notice, to expect judgment rather than kindness. But here was this powerful man, this stranger, defending her to the world. The snow swirled around her, each flake catching the city's light before disappearing into darkness. She thought of her mother, who had always told her that angels appeared when you least expected them. Looking out over the glittering skyline, Ellie wondered if perhaps her mother had sent her one, not in shining glory, but in a perfectly tailored suit, with kind eyes and a gentle voice. She stood there for a long time, lost in thought, while the city slept below and the snow kept falling, covering everything in a blanket of pristine white that made even the darkest corners seem full of possibility. The morning light streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, making Ellie squint as she stepped into the hallway. Everything gleamed, the marble floors, the crystal vases, even the brass doorknobs. She felt like a smudge on an otherwise perfect canvas. The mansion staff moved through their morning routines with practiced efficiency. A young maid dusting the antique side tables paused mid-polish to stare, then quickly looked away. The security guard by the elevator straightened his jacket, eyes darting to her then back to the wall. Everyone was unfailingly polite, but their curiosity was palpable. Good morning, dear. Catherine's warm voice cut through Ellie's discomfort. Did you sleep well? Yes, thank you. Ellie lied. In truth, she'd barely slept at all, too aware of the silk sheets and plush mattress that felt alien after years of concrete and shelter cots. Let's get you freshened up, Catherine said, leading her back to the guest suite. A hot shower works wonders for the soul. The bathroom was bigger than Ellie's last apartment. Catherine showed her how to work the complicated shower system with its multiple heads and digital temperature controls. Take your time. I'll lay out some clothes. Under the steaming water, Ellie finally let herself cry, quiet tears that mixed with the shower spray. The gentle pressure felt like heaven on her aching muscles. Catherine had left expensive-looking shampoo and soap, their subtle floral scents replacing the harsh hospital smell that still clung to her skin. When she emerged, wrapped in a fluffy towel, Catherine was waiting with a simple but elegant outfit. Dark jeans and a soft blue sweater that actually fit. We'll go shopping today, she said, helping Ellie style her damp hair. Nothing extravagant, just some basics to get you started. Mrs. Vale, I can't accept— Catherine, please, she corrected gently. And yes, you can accept it. Everyone deserves clean clothes and a bit of dignity. The shopping trip was mercifully discreet. Catherine took her to a modest department store, helping her select practical items. Underwear, jeans, sweaters, comfortable shoes. Everything was simple but good quality. When Ellie protested the cost, Catherine simply squeezed her hand. Consider it an investment in your future. Back at the mansion, Grayson was waiting in his home office. Join me for breakfast? He asked, gesturing to a small table by the window, where coffee and pastries were arranged. Ellie sat carefully, hyper-aware of her movements. The chair probably cost more than she used to make in a month of teaching. Sleep okay? Grayson asked, pouring coffee into delicate cups. Yes, thank you. Another lie, but easier than explaining how strange it felt to be indoors, to be clean, to be treated like a person again. I thought we could talk, he said, get to know each other a bit. Maria mentioned you were a teacher? Ellie nodded, warming her hands around the coffee cup. 3rd grade, at Lincoln Elementary. What made you choose teaching? I loved books as a kid, she said softly. Reading was my escape. I wanted to share that with others. Did you read to your students? A real smile touched her lips for the first time. Every day after lunch, they'd come in all wound up from recess, so we'd have quiet reading time. I'd do all the voices for different characters. Grayson chuckled, a genuine sound that transformed his usually serious face. I bet they loved that. They did. Ellie's voice caught. Bobby Martinez, he was so shy when the year started. But by Christmas, he was volunteering to read. Aloud. His mother cried at parent-teacher conferences. You miss it, Grayson observed. Every day. Ellie blinked back tears. Sorry, I don't mean to— Don't apologize for caring, he said firmly. The world needs more people who care. After breakfast, Grayson left for meetings, and Ellie found herself wandering to the kitchen, where Maria was organizing ingredients on the counter. Perfect timing, Maria exclaimed. I'm making cookies for the staff meeting. Want to help? I'd love to, Ellie said, relieved to have something useful to do. As they measured and mixed, Maria chatted about her family, her church, her 20 years working for the Vales. Catherine saved me after my Roberto died, she confided, rolling dough into balls. Not just with the job, with friendship, with prayer, she showed me God hadn't abandoned me even when I felt so alone. Ellie's hands stilled. I used to pray, she whispered, every night on the streets. But after a while— He heard you, Maria said firmly. Every word. Look where you are now. Do you really think so? Mijita, I know so. God's timing isn't our timing, but he never forgets his children. They baked batch after batch, chocolate chip, oatmeal raisin, snickerdoodles. The familiar motions of measuring and mixing were soothing, and the kitchen filled with warmth and sweet scents. Maria taught Ellie old family recipes, telling stories that made her laugh for the first time in what felt like forever. "Your laugh is like bells," Maria observed, pulling another tray from the oven. "We need more of that sound in this house." As the afternoon light faded to evening, they heard the elevator doors open. Grayson's footsteps echoed down the hall, then stopped. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in his suit but with his tie loosened, staring at the scene before him. The kitchen counter was covered in cooling cookies. The air was rich with the smell of vanilla and butter. Maria was showing Ellie how to drizzle glaze over one last batch, both of them dusted with flour. And Ellie was actually smiling. "Something smells amazing," he said softly. "Try one," Maria insisted, holding out a warm cookie. Grayson bit into it and his eyes widened. "Just like my grandmother used to make." "Ellie has the touch," Maria said proudly. "A natural baker." Ellie blushed, but couldn't hide her pleased smile. For the first time in years, she felt useful. Valued. Like maybe she wasn't just taking up space after all. The kitchen was filled with a warmth that had nothing to do with the oven. The kind of warmth that comes from shared laughter and simple pleasures, and the realization that sometimes, just sometimes, broken things could be made whole again. The days unfolded gently at the Vale penthouse, like pages in a well-loved book. For Ellie, each morning brought small victories, sleeping through the night without nightmares, looking in the mirror without flinching, finding her voice again in conversations, with Catherine over morning tea. Catherine proved to be exactly what Ellie needed, a mother's warmth without judgment. They walked together each afternoon, bundled against the Chicago winter, their footsteps crunching in perfect rhythm through the rooftop garden Grayson had built for his mother. "Writing again?" Catherine asked one morning, finding Ellie curled in the library window seat, a leather journal open in her lap. "Just thoughts," Ellie admitted. "Things I'm grateful for. It helps keep the dark thoughts away." Catherine settled beside her, her eyes kind. "And are there many things to be grateful for?" Ellie nodded, running her fingers over the smooth pages. "The quiet, hot showers, real meals, but mostly—" She hesitated. "Mostly the way you and Maria treat me like I'm normal, like I matter. You do matter, dear one." Catherine squeezed her hand. "God doesn't make mistakes." Grayson noticed the changes in Ellie too. The haunted look was fading from her eyes. Her smile came more easily. She'd even started helping Maria plan weekly menus, showing a natural talent for organization that impressed him. He found himself seeking reasons to be home more, scheduling video calls instead of traveling. There was something compelling about her quiet strength, the way she was rebuilding herself piece by piece without fanfare or self-pity. "She's good for this house," his mother told him one evening. "When was the last time you heard so much laughter here?" Grayson couldn't remember. The penthouse had always been beautiful but sterile, a showcase more than a home. Now there were fresh flowers in the kitchen, cookies in the jar, and soft music playing while Ellie and Maria cooked together. But peace, like winter sunshine, can be fragile. The attack came on a Tuesday morning. Ellie was having breakfast with Catherine when her phone buzzed, a message from Maria with a link to a breaking news story. The headline hit like a physical blow. "Vale's charity case, the truth about his live-in guest." Ellie's hands shook as she read further. Someone had leaked her entire medical history, her weight struggles, her medications for depression, even the details of her mother's illness and death. The article was brutal, painting her as a manipulative opportunist trading on Grayson's guilt. Sources close to the family are concerned. The article quoted, "This woman has a history of emotional instability. Is she really who we want influencing one of Chicago's most powerful men?" The source was clear enough. Vanessa Thornhill's perfectly manicured hand was all over it. The article even included a quote from her. "As someone who knows Grayson intimately, I worry he's being taken advantage of. This obese, homeless woman literally sleeping in his bed. It's concerning." Ellie's vision blurred. She barely made it to the bathroom before getting sick, Catherine's worried voice following her. But it got worse. By afternoon, every news channel had picked up the story. Talking heads debated her worth, her size, her right to be in Grayson's home. Social media exploded with cruel memes and worse comments. "Look at her. She probably ate herself into homelessness. Gold digger alert. She's totally playing him." How desperate is Vale to go from Vanessa Thornhill to this? Each word was a knife, reopening wounds Ellie thought had started to heal. She curled into herself on her bed, phone clutched in trembling hands, unable to look away from the torrent of hatred. Catherine tried to take the phone, to shield her, but Ellie couldn't stop reading. It was like being on the streets again, the sideways glances, the whispers, the way people looked through her instead of at her. "Don't let them win," Catherine pleaded. "You're stronger than this." But Ellie could feel herself crumbling. All the progress, all the tiny steps forward, gone in an instant. She was just the fat, worthless failure again. The burden. The joke. She started packing with shaking hands, stuffing the few clothes Catherine had bought her into a bag. She couldn't stay, couldn't keep bringing shame to this house, to Grayson's name. That's how Grayson found her, throwing things into a bag while tears streamed down her face. He'd left 3 board meetings and broken every speed limit getting home after seeing the news. "Ellie, stop, please." His voice was raw with anger, not at her, but at Vanessa, at the media, at the whole cruel circus. "I have to go." Ellie wouldn't look at him. "I don't belong here, I never did." "That's not true." Grayson moved toward her, but she flinched away. "It is true. Look at me." She gestured to herself, voice breaking. "I'm not Vanessa. I'm not beautiful or sophisticated or thin. I'm just me. Fat. Broken me. And I'm making everything worse by staying here." "I don't want Vanessa," Grayson said fiercely. "I want—" But Ellie was already moving past him, bag clutched to her chest like a shield. "Thank you for everything. For being kind when no one else was. But I can't be your charity case anymore." "Ellie!" His voice cracked with desperation, but she was running now, through the lobby, past the startled doorman, out into the swirling snow. Grayson stood at the window, watching her disappear into the white chaos of the storm. His hands pressed against the cold glass, an ache in his chest he'd never felt before. It wasn't pity that made him want to chase her. It wasn't guilt or obligation or any of the things Vanessa had suggested. It was the way Ellie's smile lit up a room, the gentle way she listened to his mother's stories, the strength it took to survive everything life had thrown at her without becoming bitter. He needed her light, and he'd just let it slip away into the darkness. The snow fell harder, erasing her footprints, while inside the penthouse the silence felt heavier than ever before. The first day without Ellie felt like an eternity to Grayson. The penthouse, once warmed by her presence, now echoed with emptiness. He barely slept that night, staring at his phone, willing it to ring. By morning, his mother found him in his office, tie askew, making calls to every shelter in Chicago. "She's out there somewhere," he muttered, rubbing his tired eyes. "I have to find her." Catherine touched his shoulder gently. "Maybe she needs time, son." But Grayson couldn't wait. He called an emergency board meeting and shocked everyone by announcing his temporary step back from Vale Industries. "Personal matters require my full attention," he stated firmly, ignoring the whispers and raised eyebrows. The next 3 days blurred together. Grayson visited shelter after shelter, showing Ellie's picture to tired social workers and volunteers. The media followed him at first, but he ignored them until they grew bored and moved on to fresher scandals. He walked through soup kitchens during lunch hours, hoping to catch a glimpse of her familiar face. Each empty search left him more hollow, more aware of how much her quiet presence had meant to him. Meanwhile, across town, Ellie was trying to rebuild herself at St. Mary's Women's Shelter. The church basement wasn't fancy, just cots lined up dormitory style and a small kitchen, but it offered safety and anonymity. Most importantly, the nuns didn't watch TV or care about billionaire gossip. Sister Margaret, the shelter's director, took one look at Ellie's tear-stained face that first night and gave her a warm bowl of soup and a quiet corner to sleep. No questions asked. By the second day, Ellie noticed how many of the women struggled with basic forms and documents. "May I help?" she asked Sister Margaret timidly. "I used to be a teacher." The nun's eyes brightened. "We've been praying for someone with teaching experience." That afternoon, Ellie sat with 3 women, helping them practice their letters. The familiar rhythm of teaching soothed her raw nerves. Here, no one cared about her size or her past. They just appreciated her patience and gentle encouragement. Word spread quickly among the shelter residents. More women started joining her informal classes, bringing tattered workbooks from the public library. Ellie created simple lesson plans, just like she used to do for her 3rd graders. "You're glowing again," Sister Margaret observed one evening, watching Ellie help a young mother sound out words. "Teaching is your gift." Ellie managed a small smile. "It helps me forget everything else." But she couldn't forget completely. Late at night, lying on her narrow cot, she thought about Grayson, about his kindness, his quiet strength, the way he'd defended her. She missed Catherine's warmth and Maria's cooking. Most of all, she missed feeling like she belonged somewhere. A week passed. Ellie's reading circle grew to 15 women. They gathered in the shelter's small community room each evening, sharing donated books and helping each other learn. Many had never finished school, but their determination inspired Ellie. "Miss Ellie," one woman named Rosa asked, "can you help me read this letter from my daughter?" Ellie leaned closer, pointing to each word carefully. "Dear Mama." She was so focused on helping Rosa that she didn't notice the small commotion at the shelter's entrance, didn't hear the quiet footsteps approaching the community room. "I miss you," Rosa read slowly. "That's perfect," Ellie encouraged. "Now the next word." A familiar voice finished softly from the doorway. "Every." Ellie's heart stopped. She looked up slowly, hardly daring to breathe. Grayson stood there, holding a large tray of sandwiches. He wore simple jeans and a sweater instead of his usual suit. His hair was slightly messy, his face unshaven. But his eyes, they held the same warmth she remembered. He didn't rush toward her, didn't make a scene. Instead, he carefully set the food tray on a side table and picked up a broom that was leaning against the wall. "Sister Margaret mentioned the floor needed sweeping," he said quietly. "Mind if I help while you finish the lesson?" Ellie could only nod, her throat tight with emotion. The women whispered curiously, but soon returned their attention to their books as Grayson methodically swept the old linoleum floor. She tried to focus on helping Rosa, but her eyes kept drifting to Grayson. The billionaire CEO was gone. In his place was simply a man doing humble work, asking nothing in return. The lesson finished as usual with a group prayer. Grayson stood respectfully in the corner, head bowed. When the women filed out for dinner, he remained by the door, still holding the broom. "You found me," Ellie finally whispered. "I had to." His voice was rough with emotion. "But not to rescue you this time. You're doing fine on your own. Then why? Because I miss you." The simple honesty in his words made her breath catch. "Not as someone to save or protect. I miss your laugh, your kindness, the way you see the best in everyone." Ellie twisted her hands nervously. "I'm still not, I haven't changed. I'm still—" "Perfect exactly as you are." Grayson set the broom aside. "I was wrong before, trying to fix everything with money and privilege. You taught me that real worth isn't about what you own or how you look. It's about what you give to others." He gestured to the room where she'd been teaching. "Like what you're doing here. You're changing lives, Ellie, just by being yourself." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I was so ashamed. When those articles came out—" "You have nothing to be ashamed of." Grayson took a careful step closer. "I'm the one who should be ashamed. I let you face that cruelty alone. I should have protected you better." "You can't protect me from everything," Ellie said softly. "No." He smiled sadly. "But I can stand beside you. Not as a savior or a billionaire, just as a man who sees your beautiful heart and wants to be worthy of it." Sister Margaret appeared in the doorway, her eyes twinkling. "Ellie, dear, would you help serve dinner? And Mr. Vale, we could use another pair of hands in the kitchen if you're willing." Grayson rolled up his sleeves immediately. "I'm not much of a cook, sister, but I can wash dishes with the best of them." That evening, they worked side by side in comfortable silence. Grayson washed while Ellie dried, their movements falling into an easy rhythm. Neither mentioned his mansion or her return. Instead, they simply existed in the moment, finding healing in honest work and quiet companionship. The bond between them, cracked but not broken, began to mend itself, not through grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but through shared service and humble hearts. In the shelter's simple kitchen, surrounded by the sounds of women laughing and children playing, they found something far more precious than rescue. They found equality in grace. The shelter's community room buzzed with energy as more women gathered for the evening reading class. What had started with just 5 students had grown to over 20 in the past few weeks. Ellie arranged donated notebooks and pencils on the worn folding tables, her heart full at the sight of eager faces filing in. "Miss Ellie." 8-year-old Maria tugged at her sleeve. "Look what came today." She held up a brand new picture book, its covers still crisp and shiny. "Sister Margaret says someone sent boxes and boxes of books." Ellie smiled, running her hand over the colourful cover. She'd mentioned to Grayson last week that many of the shelter's children had never owned a book of their own. Now, mysteriously, there were enough books for everyone. She knew who was behind it, though he'd never take credit. "That's wonderful, Maria." Ellie helped the little girl find a seat. "Maybe you can read it to us later." The room slowly filled with women of all ages. Some brought their children. Others came straight from work, still wearing uniforms from local diners and shops. They settled into their chairs with a quiet determination that made Ellie's throat tight with emotion. "Today we're going to practice writing letters," she announced, passing out lined paper. "Sometimes the best way to express our feelings is to put them down on paper." For the next hour, the only sounds were pencils scratching and soft murmurs as women helped each other spell words. Ellie moved between the tables, offering gentle encouragement and corrections. Rosa, one of her first students, proudly showed Ellie her finished letter. "It's to my daughter in Mexico," she explained. "Before, I could only send voice messages. Now I can write to her myself." Ellie squeezed her hand, fighting back tears. This was why she'd become a teacher in the first place, to help people find their voice. At 7 o'clock, as the women packed up their materials, Ellie noticed Grayson slip quietly into the back of the room. He'd traded his business suit for jeans and a simple sweater, but she'd recognize his tall frame anywhere. Their eyes met briefly, and he gave her a small wave. After saying goodbye to her students, Ellie found him waiting by the coffee station Sister Margaret had set up. He handed her a steaming cup, fixed exactly how she liked it. Lots of cream, 2 sugars. "Your class keeps growing," he observed, leading her to their usual spot, a small table near the window overlooking the shelter's garden. "Thanks to our mysterious benefactor." Ellie raised an eyebrow at him. Those books didn't just appear by magic. Grayson shrugged, but his eyes twinkled. Maybe Sister Margaret has connections. Mm-hmm. Ellie sipped her coffee, hiding her smile. His humility touched her more than any grand gesture could. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. These evening conversations had become precious to both of them, a chance to simply be themselves without pretense or pressure. "I never told you about my father," Grayson said suddenly, his voice quiet. Ellie set down her cup, giving him her full attention. She'd learned that when Grayson opened up, it was important to listen. "He left when I was 8. His fingers traced patterns on the wooden table. "Just walked out one day and never came back. My mother worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat." "That must have been so hard," Ellie said softly. "I promised myself I'd never be poor again." He gave a hollow laugh. "Built this whole empire thinking money would fill the empty spaces. But you know what? The loneliness just got bigger." Ellie reached across the table and touched his hand. "You're not alone anymore." His fingers curled around hers. "No, I'm not. Thanks to you." She blushed, looking down at their joined hands. "Can I tell you something?" "Anything." "When I first ended up on the streets, I felt invisible, like I'd disappeared from the world." Her voice wavered slightly. "Every night, I'd pray the same prayer. Please God, let me matter again. Let me make a difference somehow. And now you're changing lives every day." Grayson's grip tightened. "These women, these children, you're giving them back their dignity, their voice. Maybe that's why God led you to find me that night." Ellie mused. "Not just to help me, but so I could help others too." Before Grayson could respond, excited voices filled the hallway. Sister Margaret appeared in the doorway, beaming. "Ellie, quick, turn on the news." Grayson grabbed the remote for the small TV mounted in the corner. The local news was doing a feature story on community outreach programs, and there, on screen, was footage of Ellie's reading class from earlier that week. "In a time when literacy rates are declining," the reporter said, "an unknown woman at St. Anne's shelter is making a remarkable difference. Her free reading program has given dozens of women and children the tools they need to build better lives." The camera panned across the classroom, showing women of all ages bent over their books, faces glowing with achievement. It captured Maria proudly reading aloud and Rosa writing her very first letter home. "While this humble teacher wishes to remain anonymous," the reporter continued, "her impact on the community is impossible to ignore. She proves that sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest acts of kindness." Ellie watched, tears streaming down her face, as her students appeared on screen talking about what the class meant to them. "Miss Ellie gave me back my dreams," one woman said simply. When the segment ended, the room erupted in applause. Women and children poured in to hug Ellie, their joy infectious. Through it all, Grayson stayed in the background, watching with quiet pride. This was Ellie's moment, not as someone's charity case or media sensation, but as a woman whose genuine love was transforming lives. Later, after the excitement died down, he found her in the garden, staring up at the stars. "You okay?" he asked softly. "Better than okay." She turned to him, her face radiant. "I feel whole again, like I finally understand why everything happened the way it did." Grayson nodded, understanding perfectly. Sometimes the deepest wounds became the most powerful sources of healing, for ourselves and others. They stood together in the cool evening air, two broken people made stronger by sharing their scars. Neither spoke of returning to the mansion or changing their current arrangement. For now, this was enough. These quiet moments of connection, this shared purpose of serving others. Above them, the first stars emerged, twinkling like promises in the darkening sky. And in the gentle space between them, something new was growing, something far more precious than wealth or status or public approval. It was the quiet certainty that they had found, in each other's wounded hearts, exactly where they belonged. The grand ballroom of St. Anne's Shelter barely resembled its usual self. Twinkling lights cascaded from the rafters, transforming the humble space into something magical. 2 months of planning had culminated in this evening, where Chicago's elite would mingle with those they usually passed by on the street. Ellie stood in front of the mirror in her borrowed office, hardly recognizing herself. Catherine had helped her choose a flowing navy dress that made her feel elegant rather than exposed. The gentle fabric skimmed her curves without clinging, and the color brought out the warmth in her eyes. "You look beautiful," Catherine said, adjusting the simple pearl necklace she'd lent Ellie for the evening. "I'm terrified," Ellie admitted, her hands trembling as she smoothed her dress. "What if I mess up the speech?" Catherine squeezed her shoulders. "Just speak from your heart, dear. That's all anyone needs to hear." Outside, the ballroom filled with guests. Grayson had worked tirelessly alongside Ellie to organize this fundraiser, but he'd insisted she be the one to give the keynote address. "They need to hear your story," he'd told her. "Not from me, not from the media. From you." Through the door, Ellie could hear the familiar sounds of Maria directing volunteers, the clink of glasses, and the growing murmur of conversation. Many of her students had helped prepare for tonight, proud to show what they'd learned in her classes. Rosa had handwritten all the place cards. Maria had organized the catering with military precision. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. 5 minutes, Grayson said, poking his head in. He stopped short when he saw her, his expression softening. "Ellie, is something wrong?" She touched her hair self-consciously. "No," he said quietly. "You look perfect." Before she could respond, Sister Margaret appeared to usher her towards the stage. Ellie's heart thundered as she took her place behind the podium, looking out at the sea of faces. She saw her students, dressed in their best, beaming with encouragement. She saw wealthy donors who'd probably never spent a night wondering where they'd sleep. She saw Grayson, standing at the back of the room, nodding slightly. Taking a deep breath, Ellie began to speak. 2 years ago, I was a teacher with a classroom full of bright-eyed students and a heart full of dreams. 6 months later, I was sleeping behind a dumpster. Her voice shook slightly, but she pressed on. My mother's illness had drained every penny I had. When she died, I lost everything, my apartment, my job, my dignity. But I never lost my faith. The room fell completely silent. People ask me how I survived those nights on the street. The truth is, I survived because of grace. Grace from strangers who shared their food. Grace from shelter workers who knew my name. Grace from a man who stopped to help when everyone else walked by. Her eyes met Grayson's briefly before continuing. But the greatest grace came in learning that our deepest wounds can become our greatest gifts. Every person in this room has known pain. Every person has felt lost. And every person has the power to be someone else's miracle. Tears glimmered in her eyes as she gestured to her students. These amazing women trusted me to help them learn to read, but they've taught me so much more. They've taught me that dignity isn't found in an address or a bank account. It's found in the courage to keep trying, the strength to ask for help, and the faith to believe in better days. By now, many in the audience were openly crying. Even the most stoic business executives dabbed at their eyes. Tonight isn't about charity. It's about community. It's about remembering that we're all one crisis away from needing help, and we're all one kindness away from changing a life. She smiled through her tears. Thank you for being part of this miracle. The applause was deafening. As Ellie stepped down from the stage on shaking legs, Grayson appeared beside her. Without a word, he held out his hand. "Dance with me," he said softly. The orchestra began playing a gentle waltz. Ellie placed her trembling hand in his, letting him lead her to the center of the floor. She was acutely aware of the cameras flashing, but for once, she didn't feel exposed or ashamed. "I'm not very good at dancing," she whispered. "Just trust me," he murmured, drawing her closer. They moved together under the twinkling lights, and Ellie felt herself relaxing into the moment. She saw flashes going off around them, but these weren't the harsh paparazzi shots from that first night. These captured something entirely different: redemption, joy, possibility. Later, she would see the photos circulating online with headlines like, "The Homeless Teacher Who Inspired a City," and "From Streets to Stage, One Woman's Journey of Hope." But in this moment, all she knew was the warmth of Grayson's hand on her waist and the peace in her heart. As the evening wound down, they found themselves on the shelter's small balcony, watching the city lights twinkle below. The spring air was cool but pleasant, carrying the scent of blooming flowers from the garden below. "I haven't smiled this much in years," Grayson said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. Ellie glanced at him, noting how the usual tension had eased from his shoulders. He looked younger somehow, more alive. "Neither have I," she admitted, blushing when he turned to face her. "I've never felt more," she searched for the right word, "alive." The truth of it surprised her. Despite her fear of public speaking, despite the cameras and attention, she felt more herself than she had in years. Not because of the dress or the event's success, but because she'd finally found her purpose again. The city stretched out below them, the same city that had once seemed so cold and hostile. Now it felt full of possibility, as if the twinkling lights were reflecting all the hope in her heart. The morning after the gala dawned bright and crisp, but storm clouds were already gathering. Ellie was helping serve breakfast at the shelter when she first saw the news alert flash across the kitchen's small television screen. Breaking: Vale Industries CEO accused of misappropriating charity funds. Her hand trembled, nearly dropping the coffee pot she was holding. There on the screen was Vanessa Thornhill, immaculately dressed in a designer suit, standing before a wall of reporters. "As a concerned citizen and former board member," Vanessa's voice dripped with false sincerity, "I felt compelled to bring these irregularities to light. Mr. Vale has been diverting substantial amounts from his charitable foundation for personal use, including supporting his current romantic interests." The shelter's cook quickly changed the channel, but not before Ellie caught sight of her own face splashed across the screen, a photo from the gala, dancing in Grayson's arms. Her phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. "Don't watch the news. Grayson's handling it." But Ellie couldn't. stop herself from opening her laptop during her break. The headlines were everywhere. Vale Industries under investigation. Billionaire's romance leads to financial scandal. Charity or love affair. Where did the money go? Her hands shook as she dug deeper into the reports. The accusations centered around anonymous donations made to several charities, including substantial contributions to the shelter's literacy program. The very program she'd been running. The shelter's director, Mrs. Peterson, found her still staring at the screen an hour later. "Ellie, dear, there are some reporters outside asking questions about the program's funding." Ellie's stomach lurched. "Mrs. Peterson, I swear I didn't know." The older woman held up her hand. "I know you didn't, but maybe you should go home early today. Use the back door." Home. The word stuck in her throat. She had been staying in the shelter's staff quarters, but now even that felt tainted. Her phone buzzed again, Grayson calling for the third time. She couldn't bring herself to answer. Instead, she opened her browser again, finding live coverage of an emergency Vale Industries board meeting. The company's chairman was speaking. "Given the serious nature of these allegations, the board requires Mr. Vale to take an immediate leave of absence pending investigation." The camera caught Grayson's face as he left the boardroom. He looked exhausted but determined. "I categorically deny any misuse of foundation funds," he told the reporters. Every donation was properly documented and ethically allocated. But Ellie could read between the lines. The ethical allocation had been to help her, her program, her shelter, her cause. He had used his own foundation's money to support her dreams, and now it was costing him everything. She thought back to all those anonymous donations that had seemed like miracles. The new books, the computers, the teaching supplies. She had suspected they came from Grayson but had never asked, not wanting to seem presumptuous. Now she knew the truth, and it felt like a knife in her heart. As evening fell, she sat in her small room, writing by lamplight. Tears splashed onto the paper as she chose her words carefully. "Dear Grayson, I understand now what your kindness has cost you. From that first night in the storm to every moment since, you've sacrificed so much to help me find my way back to life. But I can't let you lose everything you've built because of me. You showed me that I matter, that my dreams matter. Now I need to show you that your legacy matters more than my happiness. Thank you for teaching me how to believe in miracles again. With love, Ellie." She folded the note carefully, tucking it into an envelope. At 3 o'clock in the morning, when the shelter was quiet, she packed her few belongings into a small bag. She left the note with Mrs. Peterson, knowing she would get it to Grayson. As she slipped out into the pre-dawn darkness, her heart felt like it was being torn in two. She wasn't running from scandal this time. She had faced that demon and won. She was running from love. Because loving Grayson meant protecting him, even if it meant breaking both their hearts. The city was just beginning to stir as she walked away from the shelter. Behind her, the first news vans were already arriving, their satellite dishes reaching toward the lightening sky like hungry fingers. Across town, Grayson was already awake, reviewing documents with his lawyers when Mrs. Peterson called. His hands shook as he read Ellie's note, understanding washing over him like a wave. "She's protecting me," he whispered, pressing the paper to his chest. "Not from scandal, but from love." The realization hit him with devastating clarity. Ellie wasn't running because she was ashamed or afraid of the media circus. She was running because she loved him enough to sacrifice their happiness for his reputation, his company, his life's work. He stood at his office window, watching the sun rise over the city where, somewhere, Ellie was disappearing into the morning crowds. The woman who had taught him about true worth wasn't running from judgment this time. She was running toward sacrifice, believing it was the greatest gift she could give him. The note trembled in his hands as he read it one more time, his heart breaking at the love embedded in every carefully chosen word. She had signed it with love, the first time she had ever expressed her feelings so directly, and she had done it in goodbye. The irony wasn't lost on him. The woman who had taught him that true worth had nothing to do with money was now leaving because she thought she was costing him too much. She didn't understand that she had given him something far more valuable than his company or his reputation. She had given him his heart back. His phone buzzed with another news alert. Vale Industries stock plummets amid scandal. But for the first time in his life, Grayson Vale didn't care about the numbers. All he could think about was the growing distance between him and the woman who had taught him what really mattered. The weeks after Ellie's departure melted into each other like watercolors in the rain. Grayson's once pristine office became a maze of legal documents and newspaper clippings. His lawyers worked around the clock, but Vanessa's accusations had done their damage. The foundation's reputation lay in tatters, and Vale Industries' stock price plummeted with each passing day. "We need to liquidate assets," his financial advisor said one grey morning, sliding a folder across the mahogany desk. "The legal fees alone." Grayson nodded, his eyes distant. "Sell the mansion first." The words felt strange in his mouth, but somehow right. The glass palace that had once symbolized his success now felt hollow, without Ellie's warmth filling its spaces. Without her laughter echoing through the halls, without the smell of her baking wafting from the kitchen, it was just an empty shell of wealth. The sale made headlines. Billionaire Vale downsizes amid scandal. The media painted it as a fall from grace, but Grayson felt lighter with each possession he shed. He moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood, bringing only his books, his mother's photographs, and the coat he had wrapped around Ellie that stormy night. Catherine visited him often, bringing homemade soup and quiet wisdom. "You know," she said one evening, stirring sugar into her tea, "sometimes we have to lose everything to find what we're really worth." Grayson smiled sadly, watching the city lights flicker through his new window. "I already know what I'm worth, Mom. She taught me that." Meanwhile, on the outskirts of Chicago, in a neighborhood where hope seemed as scarce as money, Ellie was building something beautiful from nothing. She had found an abandoned church with broken windows and peeling paint, but its basement was dry and warm. With permission from the parish council, she set up a makeshift classroom using donated furniture and books salvaged from library sales. Word spread quickly among the homeless families in the area. Children who had never owned a book began showing up at the basement door, drawn by Ellie's gentle voice and patient smile. She taught them to read using whatever materials she could find: newspapers, old magazines, even food labels. "Miss Ellie," a small girl named Rosa asked one day, "why did you choose this place? It's so far from everything." Ellie looked around at the basement walls, which the children had covered with their artwork and practice letters. "Sometimes," she said carefully, "we find our real home in the last place we expect." She lived simply now, in a tiny room above a nearby diner where she worked morning shifts to pay her rent. Every spare dollar went to buying supplies for her students. At night, she wrote in her journal, pouring out her heart in prayers and memories. "Dear God, thank you for showing me that my worth isn't in where I live or what I own. Thank you for these children who remind me every day that love multiplies when we share it. And please watch over him." The children loved singing, so Ellie taught them old hymns she remembered from her childhood. Their voices, though untrained, filled the basement with joy that seemed to seep through the cracks in the ceiling and rise up to heaven itself. As autumn faded into winter, she started serving simple meals before class, soup and sandwiches for little ones who often came to school hungry. She couldn't bear to see them trying to learn on empty stomachs. The local food bank helped when they could, and sometimes mysterious donations appeared on the church steps. Boxes of fresh fruit or warm bread that made her think of Grayson, though she tried not to. One particularly cold evening, as snow began to dust the city streets, Ellie gathered her students for their end-of-day ritual. "Who wants to lead our song today?" she asked, smiling as every hand shot up. They chose "Amazing Grace," their voices rising pure and clear in the basement air. Ellie closed her eyes as she sang with them, letting the familiar words wash over her like a blessing. "I once was lost, but now am found." She didn't hear the basement door open. Didn't notice the tall figure standing in the shadows, thinner now, with darker circles under his eyes, but the same intense gaze. Grayson Vale had walked halfway across the city, following rumors and half-remembered directions, until the sound of singing led him to this unlikely sanctuary. He stood motionless, watching Ellie move among the children, her face glowing with the same inner light that had first drawn him to her in that dark alley. She was thinner too, but somehow more substantial, as if letting go of everything had allowed her true self to shine through more clearly. The children's voices soared on the final verse, echoing off the concrete walls and rising through the broken church above like a prayer. In that moment, as snow fell silently outside and hymns filled the air inside, two souls who had lost everything stood on the brink of finding what mattered most. Ellie's voice carried the melody, strong and clear, unaware that the man she had left to protect was standing in the shadows, finally understanding that she had given him not loss, but freedom. The freedom to discover that true worth had nothing to do with bank accounts or board meetings, and everything to do with the light in a child's eyes when they read their first word, or the grace in a woman's heart when she gives everything away for love. The last notes of the hymn faded into the winter darkness, leaving only the sound of falling snow and beating hearts in their wake. Grayson took one unsteady step into the warmth of the basement, his legs trembling from exhaustion. The flickering light from a dozen mismatched candles cast dancing shadows on the walls, their gentle glow a stark contrast to the biting cold he'd just escaped. The sweet scent of beeswax mingled with the musty basement air. Ellie's voice caught mid-verse, the hymn dying in her throat as her eyes met his. She stood frozen, one hand still raised in conducting the children's choir, the other pressed against her heart. Time seemed to stretch between them like pulled taffy, neither able to form words. In that suspended moment, Grayson tried to smile, but the room began to spin. The weeks of searching, of sleepless nights and missed meals, finally caught up with him. His knees buckled, and the world tilted sideways. "Grayson!" Ellie's cry echoed off the concrete walls as she rushed forward, catching him before he hit the floor. His skin felt like ice beneath her touch. The children scattered into action, moving with the quick efficiency of those used to crisis. 10-year-old Rosa grabbed the stack of donated blankets from the reading corner. 8-year-old Marcus and his sister Maria ran to the small kitchenette where Ellie kept supplies for their meals. "Dear God," Ellie prayed aloud, her voice trembling as she cradled Grayson's head in her lap. "Please protect him. Please give him strength." Her fingers brushed through his hair, noticing how much grey had appeared since she'd last seen him. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm right here." Rosa returned with an armful of blankets, her young face pinched with worry. Together, they wrapped Grayson in layers of worn fleece and wool, tucking the edges around his shoulders like a cocoon. "Miss Ellie," Rosa said softly, "is this the man from the pictures? The one who helped you?" Ellie nodded, unable to trust her voice. She'd seen the newspaper clippings about Grayson's fall from grace, the lawsuits, the accusations, the loss of his fortune. Each headline had felt like a knife in her heart, knowing she was part of the reason for his downfall. Marcus and Maria returned with steaming mugs of soup, the simple vegetable broth Ellie made each day for the children's lunch. The steam rose in delicate curls in the candlelight, carrying the scent of carrots and comfort. "He needs to drink," Ellie said, gently lifting Grayson's head. His eyes fluttered open briefly, focusing on her face with a mixture of relief and exhaustion before closing again. The children worked together, bringing hot water in chipped mugs to warm his frozen hands and feet. They moved with the quiet efficiency of those who understood suffering, who had known what it meant to be cold and hungry and lost. Outside, the snow continued to fall, coating the church windows in a blanket of white. The basement grew quieter as evening deepened, the children reluctantly heading home one by one, each pausing to pat Grayson's blanket-covered shoulder or whisper a prayer. Rosa was the last to leave. "Will you be okay, Miss Ellie?" she asked, her dark eyes serious in her young face. "Yes, sweetheart," Ellie assured her, managing a small smile. "God brought him back to us. He'll be fine now." After the door closed behind Rosa, silence settled over the basement like another blanket. Ellie sat on the floor beside Grayson, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest. His face looked younger in sleep, the worried lines smoothed away, though shadows of exhaustion still lingered under his eyes. The candles burned lower, casting pools of golden light that grew smaller and more intimate. Ellie's hand found Grayson's, her fingers intertwining with his. His skin felt warmer now, life flowing back into his tired body. "You found me again," she whispered into the quiet, her voice barely louder than the falling snow outside. "Even when I didn't deserve it, even when I ran away to protect you." Tears slipped down her cheeks, landing softly on their joined hands. "I thought if I left, you could save your company, your reputation. I thought I was doing the right thing." Through the basement windows, moonlight filtered in, mixing with the candlelight to paint silver and gold patterns on the walls. The night stretched long and quiet around them, filled with the gentle rhythm of their breathing and the distant sound of church bells marking the hours. Ellie's heart beat steady and strong, a counterpoint to Grayson's slower pulse under her fingers. She began to pray again, not with desperate words this time, but with the deep, wordless gratitude of a soul finding its way home. Her faith, tested but unbroken, wrapped around them both like the blankets that kept them warm. The basement air grew heavy with peace and possibility, each breath a reminder that sometimes the greatest acts of love come disguised as sacrifice. And sometimes the longest journeys lead us right back to where we're meant to be. Hours passed in that gentle vigil, marked only by the gradual settling of snow outside and the quiet cadence of two hearts finding their way back to the same rhythm. Ellie remained steadfast beside him, her presence an anchor in the storm they'd both weathered, her prayers a bridge between what was lost and what might yet be found. Dawn crept through the basement windows, painting pale squares of light across the concrete floor. Ellie had dozed off, her head resting against the wall, one hand still holding Grayson's. The morning light caught the silver threading through his dark hair, and as consciousness returned, his eyes fluttered open. "Ellie?" His voice was rough, barely more than a whisper. She startled awake, relief flooding her face as she met his gaze. "You're awake. How do you feel?" Grayson attempted to sit up, but weakness made him sink back against the makeshift bed of blankets. Despite his exhaustion, a small smile touched his lips. "Like I've been hit by a truck, but seeing you makes it worth it." "Don't move," Ellie insisted, squeezing his hand. "You need rest and something warm to eat." She rose carefully, her joints stiff from the night spent on the floor. "I have soup ready. It's not fancy, but it's nourishing. In the small kitchen area she'd set up in the corner of the basement, Ellie stirred the pot of vegetable soup she kept simmering for the children who came to her reading classes. The familiar motions of ladling the soup into a bowl helped steady her trembling hands. When she returned to Grayson's side, he had managed to prop himself up against the wall. The morning light revealed the toll the past weeks had taken. His designer clothes were wrinkled and worn, his face gaunt with exhaustion. Yet his eyes held the same warmth she remembered, focused on her with an intensity that made her heart skip. "Small sips," she instructed, helping him hold the bowl. "You need to take it slow." They sat in comfortable silence as he ate, the only sound the quiet scrape of the spoon against the bowl. When he finished, Ellie set the empty bowl aside and settled back beside him. "Why did you come looking for me?" she asked finally, her voice soft with vulnerability. Grayson's hand found hers again, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. "Because every day without you felt wrong. The mansion, the money, none of it mattered anymore. I kept thinking about how you looked when you were teaching, how alive you were, how much light you brought to everyone around you." Tears welled in Ellie's eyes. "I left to protect you. When I saw what was happening with the company, with Vanessa's lawsuit, I couldn't bear being the reason for your downfall." "Ellie." Grayson's voice grew stronger, more certain. "You were never the reason for my downfall. If anything, you showed me what really matters. Before I met you, I thought I could fix everything with money. I thought being a savior meant writing checks and making grand gestures." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "But watching you here, teaching these children, sharing what little you have, you taught me that love isn't about status or saving someone. It's about serving them, walking beside them, sharing their burdens." Tears spilled down Ellie's cheeks. "I was so afraid," she whispered. "Afraid I wasn't enough. Afraid I'd never be more than the homeless woman you found in an alley. When Vanessa revealed my medical history, my weight issues, my failures, it felt like everyone was seeing what I'd always feared, that I wasn't worthy of someone like you." Grayson's hand tightened on hers. "You were always enough," he said gently, his voice thick with emotion. "Even when I wasn't. I was the one who needed to learn what real worth looks like. You showed me that dignity isn't found in bank accounts or boardrooms. It's in how we treat each other, how we love each other." Morning light filled the basement now, warming the humble space. Through the windows, they could hear the first stirrings of the neighborhood coming to life. Car engines, distant voices, the rhythm of the city awakening. Father Michael, the shelter's priest, arrived mid-morning, his weathered face creasing with concern when he saw Grayson's condition. "I know a doctor," he said, "who helps at the free clinic. I'll ask him to come by." Throughout the day, Ellie moved between caring for Grayson and teaching her regular classes. The children tiptoed past where he rested, some leaving small offerings, a cookie saved from lunch, a drawing, a whispered prayer. Their simple acts of kindness brought fresh tears to Ellie's eyes. Dr. Matthews arrived in the afternoon, his kind eyes and gentle manner immediately putting everyone at ease. He examined Grayson thoroughly, diagnosing exhaustion and mild exposure, but nothing more serious. "Rest," he prescribed. "Good food and good company. Sometimes the heart needs healing as much as the body." As evening approached, Ellie sat grading simple worksheets while Grayson dozed. The basement was quiet except for the scratch of her pen and the soft sound of his breathing. Watching him sleep, she felt something warm and familiar stirring in her heart. Not the desperate, fearful love that had made her run away, but something steadier, stronger. The spark between them hadn't died during their separation. Instead, it had transformed, like a flame sheltered from the wind, growing stronger in the quiet moments of service and understanding. Their shared brokenness had become a foundation for something new, something real and lasting. Rosa appeared at Ellie's elbow, breaking her reverie. "Miss Ellie," she whispered, "is Mr. Grayson going to stay with us now?" Ellie smiled softly, watching the peaceful rise and fall of Grayson's chest. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I think he's exactly where he needs to be right now." The evening light filtered through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. In this humble basement, surrounded by worn books and children's artwork, hope had found them again. Not in grand gestures or public declarations, but in the quiet understanding that love, real love, meets us exactly where we are. The mid-March sunshine streamed through the basement windows, catching dust motes in its golden beams as Ellie adjusted her phone on its makeshift stand, a stack of worn textbooks. She smoothed her simple blue cardigan, took a deep breath, and pressed record. "Hi everyone, I'm Miss Ellie, and today we're going to learn about the power of words." Her warm smile radiated through the lens as she held up a dog-eared copy of Bridge to Terabithia. Sometimes stories can build bridges between hearts, just like they build bridges between worlds. What had started as simple recorded lessons for her shelter students had somehow found its way onto social media. First hundreds, then thousands of viewers began sharing her videos, touched by her gentle teaching style and authentic approach. "Did you see the comments?" Grayson asked one evening, scrolling through his phone while Ellie prepared their nightly tea. He'd recovered his strength over the past weeks, though he'd traded his designer suits for comfortable sweaters and jeans. "Someone called you the teacher America needs right now." Ellie blushed, setting down their mugs on the folding table they'd turned into an office space. "I'm just trying to help people learn to read," she said softly. "The same way others helped me when I was struggling." "That's exactly why people connect with you," Grayson replied, his eyes warm with pride. "You're real. You've been where they are." The truth of his words became evident when Sarah Martinez, a reporter from Channel 7 News, showed up at the church basement one Tuesday morning. Her camera crew set up quietly in the corner while Ellie taught her regular morning class. "Keep going," Sarah whispered, clearly moved by watching Ellie work with a group of elderly men learning to read for the first time. "Just pretend we're not here." The resulting story aired nationally that weekend. From homeless to hope, the teacher who never stopped believing. The segment showed Ellie working with students of all ages, from young children to seniors, interspersed with clips from her online lessons. It shared her journey from successful teacher to homeless survivor to emerging community leader, portraying her not as a victim, but as a testament to resilience and grace. "What struck me most," Sarah's voiceover concluded, "was how Miss Ellie, as her students call her, treats everyone who walks through that door. Whether they're 6 or 60, whether they live in mansions or shelters, she sees their potential first. In a world that too often looks away from those who struggle, she looks them in the eye and says, 'You matter, you can learn, you belong here.'" The response was overwhelming. Donations began pouring in, everything from books and supplies to monetary contributions. Local businesses offered support, and other shelters requested help starting similar programs. One morning, Grayson arrived at their basement classroom with an idea that would change everything. "Remember the Veil Foundation?" he asked, spreading papers across their table. "The board's been reaching out. They want to restructure, start fresh, and they want both of us involved." Ellie looked up from the lesson plans she was reviewing, her heart skipping. "Both of us? But I don't know anything about running a foundation." Grayson's eyes sparkled. "You know everything about what matters. Think about it. We could expand the literacy program, create a model other cities could follow. You could train teachers, develop curriculum, and I could handle the business side, make sure the resources get where they are needed most. The foundation was indeed revived, but not as the top-down charity it had once been. The new Vale Duran Foundation for Literacy and Community Development became a grassroots organization, focused on meeting people where they were and providing tools for sustainable change. Ellie's videos became part of a formal online learning platform accessible to anyone with internet access. Grayson's business acumen helped structure the foundation efficiently, while his experience with corporate partnerships brought in sustainable funding. Their working relationship blossomed in unexpected ways. Late nights planning curriculum turned into long conversations about their hopes and dreams. Quick lunch meetings became lingering dinners where they shared stories and laughter. "Remember when you found me in that alley?" Ellie asked one evening as they packed up after a board meeting. "Did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" Grayson paused, looking at her thoughtfully. "I knew you were special," he said quietly. "I just didn't know how much you'd change my life. Change everything, really." The city's perception had shifted dramatically. Where tabloids had once mocked the Billionaire's homeless charity case, newspapers now ran headlines celebrating the Angel of Chicago and her innovative approach to community education. But Ellie remained unchanged by the attention. She still taught her morning classes in the church basement, still sat with struggling readers after hours, still believed in the power of patience and persistence. The only difference was that now she had the resources to help more people, to reach further, to build something lasting. "You know what makes you different?" Maria, who'd followed Grayson from his mansion to volunteer at the foundation, said one day, "You never forgot what it felt like to need help, and now that you can give help, you do it with such grace." Local businesses began sponsoring literacy corners in their shops. Coffee houses hosted reading groups. The library system partnered with the foundation to create mobile reading rooms that traveled to underserved neighborhoods. Through it all, Ellie and Grayson's partnership deepened. They developed an easy rhythm, anticipating each other's needs, complementing each other's strengths. Their evening planning sessions often stretched late into the night, neither wanting to end the comfortable companionship they'd found. "I think we make a good team," Grayson said one night as they reviewed applications for new teaching positions. Ellie looked up, meeting his gaze. The basement classroom was quiet, lit only by desk lamps. Outside, Chicago's lights twinkled against the darkening sky. "We do," she agreed softly. "Who would have thought?" The media might call her Chicago's angel, but Ellie knew the truth. She was just one person who'd been blessed with a second chance, working alongside a man who'd learned that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars. Together, they were building something neither of them could have created alone, a foundation of hope, built on understanding, strengthened by shared purpose, and illuminated by the light of possibilities yet to come. The autumn had painted Chicago's outskirts in brilliant shades of gold and crimson when Ellie and Grayson drove out to inspect their newest project. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the freshly paved driveway as their car approached a modest but beautiful house nestled among tall maple trees. "I can't believe how quickly they finished it," Ellie said, her eyes wide as she took in the warm brick exterior and welcoming front porch. "It seems like just yesterday we were looking at the blueprints." Grayson smiled, watching her reaction carefully. "The contractors worked overtime. They knew how important this transitional housing project is to the foundation." As they stepped out of the car, crisp leaves crunched beneath their feet. The air held that special stillness that comes just before the first snow of winter. Ellie hugged her coat closer, remembering another snowy night that had changed her life forever. "Come see inside," Grayson said softly, taking her hand. His touch was warm and familiar now, after months of working side by side. He guided her up the porch steps, fishing a key from his pocket. The door swung open to reveal a cozy interior that took Ellie's breath away. A fire crackled merrily in the stone fireplace, casting dancing shadows on walls that were far from bare. Her steps faltered as she noticed the photographs. There they were, moments from their journey captured in elegant frames. Ellie teaching at the shelter, Grayson volunteering beside her, the two of them at the fundraising gala, dancing under twinkling lights, their smiling faces at the foundation's opening ceremony. "I don't understand," Ellie whispered, her voice trembling. "This was supposed to be a shelter for families in transition. We planned it together." Grayson squeezed her hand gently before letting go. His eyes held a tenderness that made her heart skip. "It is a shelter," he replied, his voice low and earnest. "For me." Before Ellie could process his words, Grayson lowered himself to one knee. The firelight caught the silver at his temples, highlighting the humility and hope in his expression. "Ellie," he began, reaching for her hands. "That night I found you in the alley. I said something that the media twisted into a scandal, but I meant every word then, and I mean them even more now." He paused, drawing a steadying breath. "You belong in my bed, not as a guest or someone to be saved, but as my wife." Tears spilled down Ellie's cheeks as she stared at this man who had changed her life in so many ways. The proud CEO who had learned to serve. The billionaire who had lost everything only to find something more precious. The man who had seen past her size, her circumstances, her shame, to the person she truly was. Through the window, the first snowflakes of the season began to fall, dancing in the gathering dusk. Ellie's heart felt as full as it had once felt empty, transformed by love that asked nothing in return. "Yes," she whispered through her tears, nodding as joy overwhelmed her. "Yes." Grayson rose to his feet, gathering her close as the snow fell softly outside. In the warmth of their embrace, both remembered that first desperate night, how far they'd come, how much they'd learned, how love had changed them both. The fire crackled, snow fell, and in a house built for new beginnings, two hearts that had once been lost found their way home. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and crisp, with sunlight sparkling off fresh snow that blanketed Chicago. Inside the old church basement where Ellie had once taught reading classes, excitement filled the air as women from the shelter helped decorate the humble space with twinkling lights and white flowers. Upstairs in a small side room, Catherine Vale fussed over Ellie's simple white dress, smoothing invisible wrinkles with trembling hands. "You look absolutely beautiful, my dear," she whispered, her eyes bright with tears. The dress wasn't designer. They'd found it at a modest boutique. But its clean lines and soft fabric made Ellie feel truly beautiful for the first time in years. "I never thought I'd have a mother again," Ellie said, softly, squeezing Catherine's hand. "Thank you for loving me like your own." Catherine dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. "God brought you to us that night for a reason. You helped my son find his heart again, and in doing so, you became the daughter I always wanted." The old church bells chimed 11 o'clock, their deep tones echoing through the building. From below came the sound of children laughing. The same children Ellie had taught and fed during those dark days when she and Grayson were apart. Now they sat in their best clothes, holding small bouquets of white roses. "It's time," Catherine said, offering her arm. "Are you ready?" Ellie took a deep breath, remembering the long journey that had led to this moment. "More than ready." The wooden stairs creaked softly as they descended. At the entrance to the main chapel, Ellie paused, overwhelmed by the sight before her. The pews were filled not with society's elite, but with faces she knew and loved. Women from the shelter who had become her friends, volunteers who had worked beside her, children whose lives she had touched. Their smiles held more worth than all the diamonds that had sparkled at that long-ago charity gala. The old piano began to play, and Catherine squeezed Ellie's arm. Together they walked down the aisle, past faces wet with happy tears. But Ellie saw only Grayson, waiting for her at the altar. He wore a simple dark suit, his eyes fixed on her with such love that her heart seemed to skip a beat. When they reached him, Catherine placed Ellie's hand in his, then kissed them both on the cheek. "My children," she whispered, before taking her seat in the front pew. The priest, the same one who had helped care for Grayson during his illness, smiled warmly at them both. His words spoke of love's power to transform, of faith that sustains through darkness, of grace that lifts the fallen and humbles the proud. When it came time for their vows, Grayson's voice was steady and sure. "Ellie," he began, "I promise to cherish you not as someone to be saved, but as my equal and my heart. You taught me that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in love freely given. I vow to walk beside you, to support your dreams, to laugh with you, to cry with you, and to thank God every day for bringing you into my life." Tears spilled down Ellie's cheeks as she responded. "Grayson, you found me at my lowest and saw worth where I saw only shame. I promise to love you not for what you can give me, but for who you are, a man whose heart is bigger than his bank account ever was. I vow to be your partner, your friend, your safe harbor, and to remind you every day that love is the greatest miracle of all." Their kiss was sweet and pure, blessed by the applause and cheers of their unusual but perfect family. As they turned to face their guests, Ellie caught sight of the children throwing rose petals and remembered reading to them by candlelight in this very church. The reception was held in the church basement, transformed now with fairy lights and tables laden with home-cooked food. There was no champagne in crystal flutes. Instead, they toasted with punch in paper cups. No orchestra played, but the piano teacher from the shelter filled the room with joyful music as children danced and laughed. As evening approached, Grayson and Ellie said their goodbyes, hugging each guest with genuine affection. They drove home through gently falling snow to their little brick house on the outskirts of the city. The porch light welcomed them, and inside, the fireplace cast a warm glow across their living room. Grayson helped Ellie out of her coat, then pulled her close. His eyes sparkled with memory as he whispered, "You belong in my bed, not the streets." Ellie laughed through happy tears, remembering how those words had once caused such scandal. Who knew that line would lead to all of this? They stood together by the window, watching snowflakes dance in the gathering dusk. The city skyline glimmered in the distance, no longer a realm of impossible dreams, but simply lights on the horizon of their shared world. Here in their modest home, filled with warmth and purpose, they had found something far greater than wealth. They had found love strong enough to thaw the coldest heart, faith deep enough to weather any storm, and grace abundant enough to transform two broken lives into one beautiful whole. Thank you for being here. If something in this story stayed with you, I'd love to see you again. Subscribe, and tomorrow I'll bring you another story crafted with heart.